again is Claudia. I have a practice called social justice healing. And what I want to do today is just share some of the tools that I believe in will help us have some immense courage in times like these. And so basically, it's about reconnection, care, reconnection, and joy. Like these geese over here, they take turns resting, hyping each other up, being a loving witness, and leading up front. So it takes, yes, it takes courage in times like these, in times of great collapse. But like Norma Wong says, and I'll get into that a little bit later, when we commit each and every day to the actions that we can take, to the future we want to build for the generations that come after us, 150 years from now, if we have a very clear vision of what future we want, I can tell you, if I just like look within and really think about that, for me, it would have a lot of green spaces, a lot of animals, a lot of leisure time, a lot of family time, a lot of connected care networks, and systems that make sense, systems that are reflective of our human and psychological needs for connection. We will need to expand in our capacity, but because we can integrate from our own wisdom, our own histories, our own knowledge, our own joy, we can have confidence that those muscles will build as we keep growing, as we keep going. It's through the practice, right? We are living in times where people that want to take advantage of us, and the abusers of power, the abusers and oppressors in also corporations, and the wealthiest people that are trying to exploit us. They want us afraid, they want us alone, and they want us upholding a lot of systems of abuse. And I can get into that as we go, but the more courage we have to connect and to work through discomfort, to build our tolerance for frustration so that we can actually be in community, right? Like not just with people that are exactly like us, definitely with good boundaries, right? So also not with people that are hell bent on abusing us either, but with a shared willingness to expand, to regenerate, to grow, to learn together. We can do so much, guys. We can. And not everything is going to be commodified. It's going to be in a lot of the informal ways that we care for each other. But I think the more we commit each and every day to be and live as a reflection of that, the more we know what we're working towards. So let's be like these geese. Um, this is what I mean by window of tolerance. This is in mental health language, it's what's described as your ability to deal with what's happening in life, right? I know for a fact, with all these things that are happening socially, the norm of patriarchy, of white supremacy culture, of abuses of power, and I would say abusers too, the people that are willing to uphold these systems, stay in a zoned out state and a state of disconnection from accountability, right? So they're ignoring how we're all interconnected. So they disconnect from accountability, they disconnect from their ability to work through discomfort, they disconnect from what we are disconnected from each other in the most simple ways. We can learn to co-regulate, but there's also a lot of simple ways you expand your window of tolerance, but it takes discipline and self-awareness so that when you engage with folks, it's not coming from the most impulsive place. It's coming from a place of kindness and willingness. So um, it's natural to get dysregulated. But what we see in white supremacy culture is that people lead, especially people with power, they kind of use their dysregulation as a punishment for your non obedience, right? Non compliance. If you get away from in advance succumbing to that or buying into that and just let people deal with their own frustration as long as you know you're acting in good faith with folks, um, being accountable, being transparent, and fighting for your neighbors in ways that are nonviolent but focused and strategic, then we don't fall for these dysregulated individuals just throwing a temper tantrum because they haven't learned how to manage their own feelings, you know. So there's a lot of grounded ways that we can expand our window of tolerance. And the opposite of the hypo aroused, the zoned out, is the hyper arousal. So that's the temper tantruming, or internally in your body it would feel like, you know, maybe blood pumping through your veins, a hot face, sweaty face. So if we notice zoned out or hyper aroused and we don't really feel anything in between, that means we need to expand our window of tolerance, even either in that moment or just like in general as a practice throughout your day, right? Don't wait um, to give that to yourself. It's truly a practice that it's embodied wisdom. And I know that under white supremacy culture, embodied wisdom isn't really recognized or, um, honored, but it's something you earn through practice. And there is so much wisdom. And if we learn to honor it within ourselves, we can also see, oh, where did my ancestors also have successes that I can learn from and carry down to my community or my children or the children in my neighborhood, or anyone that's in my vicinity. You become a gift. You become a connector. So it's very normal, especially in these trying times, to have a maybe a small window of tolerance, but noticing where whatever you have, meet yourself with grace and do the practices that help expand it. This is something that's like very basic cognitive behavioral therapy, but I wanted to show it as other evidence that you might be outside of your window of tolerance. So if you have all or nothing thinking, right? Mental filter, that means you only pay attention to some evidence, right? You overgeneralize, you disqualify the positive, jump to conclusions, or you try to predict the future or read minds. We see this a lot with abused people and abusers, especially like in these systems right now. The way people really have read between the lines to try to find what they're looking for in Trump's mind or in an abusive religious leader's mind, just to justify continuing that lead, is so problematic, right? So don't read between the lines. Just go by what people say. And if it does not make sense, it's okay to just recoil. It's okay to like really reconsider your alliances. Um, Jumping to conclusions, if when people talk with so much certainty about what's going to happen next, it should be sort of a red flag, right? Some of these could be a red flag you're out of your window of tolerance, or it could be a red flag that the person that you're engaging with is outside of their window of tolerance. And these just do not constitute like evidence. They don't constitute um, anything beneficial. Emotional reasoning is, again, like if someone's having a temper tantrum and they think their anger is your responsibility. Um, they think that their anger is maybe the consequence for your non-cooperation. Or if you yourself have a sense, a feeling like, a dream, a sensation, like that is useful information. I would never disqualify or discredit your own impulses, but it's very important to take stock of reality and weigh it with the truth. Like the truth will always set us free, y'all. And the mysteries of life are, there's a lot of them, right? And I think that there's an important place for navigating those mysteries. However, when people are speaking with so much certainty because they had a feeling, or they had a vision, you see this a lot in with high control groups. That's not enough evidence that they're necessarily a good leader. So gather more evidence. Maybe it appeals to you, but be curious about that. Wonder why, because the way we engage with others will shape our brains. And so you deserve to be selective on who you give your attention to, including online, in real life, and being more clear on that and being more curious about that within yourself, within others, and really trying to get to the truth and the nuance of the situation. It's not all or nothing, right? It's not black and white. It's not always this. It's not left or right. It's not both sides. No. Reality is so much more nuanced. So, what will help us? There's a lot of evidence what has already worked, including the resistance of oppression that people have already done. So let's learn from that. Let's learn to resist the oppression that we normalize within us too. Magnifying or catastrophizing. So just kind of like that exaggerated thinking, it could just be a sign that you're dysregulated. So again, there's grounding techniques that we can do with our bodies, even as simple as going on a walk. Emotional freedom technique, it's a really beautiful tapping technique, or breathing exercises or movement. Like, be curious about what works for you and do those things. Nurture yourself. There's nothing, that's not something someone has to necessarily reward you with. We do get fulfilled in relationships, but under these systems of consumerism, people have commodified so much of what already makes you human. Like, you could find it in yourself, in your neighborhood, in your environment. So you have so much wealth that isn't accounted for by the current measures of success. So really tapping into that will help you regulate your nervous system. Again, these are all signs that maybe your system's dysregulated, but that doesn't mean they are wrong, right? They could entirely wrong. They give you some information. So if I have a all or nothing thinking, it might mean I'm very uncomfortable in a situation, and I might not know why. But if I give myself the grace of stepping away and being curious, then I might find out, oh, I need a boundary with this person, or maybe I need a break from this person, or, oh, what they said was really harmful. So let me offer um, to repair with them, or let me ask them for repair. If they're willing, then let's move forward with repair, though, with acknowledgement. And I do really, really believe that there's a lot of value in our bodies, in our emotions, and they speak to us, but that's not a replacement for facts, right? That's some information. So, should have, could have, would have, or musting a situation doesn't really help you move forward. So, as much as I believe in looking at the past for our wisdom, it doesn't move us forward if we're staying um, in a state of paralysis of regret. Whereas you can learn the lesson of that experience and then apply it to a similar or future situation, because staying just really stuck on that regret can feel really painful. And the pain is, there's nothing wrong. Again, these are human feelings, but we can't stay stuck in that. And when a leader insists that we do stay stuck in that, a lot of these can be used as manipulations. And we see this in propaganda, the all or nothing thinking, the labeling. We've been seeing a lot of name calling lately, a lot of conflation of ideas with these labels, right? So another thing that happens under authoritarianism, and also just the way we've been conditioned to always be staying really busy, as we lose a connection to our own instincts, our own things that we deserve out of life that we can sometimes just rest into. Now, when I say rest, I don't mean like screen time, just laying there. It is more about sometimes moving some muscles, right? So, say for example, if you've been very isolated, you'll find it restful, maybe challenging at first, but again, building that muscle of connecting with people. So, going to the park or joining a book club, doing something that helps you connect with folks, or even just calling a friend. Um, all of these types of rest require that you look inside and kind of notice what is it you need. Spiritual rest is looking at what's beyond yourself. So, kind of like the understanding the mysteries of life. What do they mean to you? What do you want them to mean? There's a creative act in that too, but none that, in my opinion, should replace like the evidence of what actually helps societies run well. Which there are societies that do and have run well, that are trying to build norms, or do build norms of collaboration, cooperation, liberation. And of course, we have a long way to go, but there's evidence of what has already helped folks free themselves. But it's not going to happen under some type of hierarchy, you know? So, anyway, so spiritual rest is looking at what's greater than you. Maybe for you, that's being of service in your community. Maybe it's gardening, even, or making art. For me, that's making art. That's a spiritual rest. Um, it helps me move through uncertainty. Physical rest is quality sleep. If you're sleeping too much, maybe that's something to be curious about too. Like maybe it's about getting out and moving yourself and just kind of being in the world. Sensory rest, going tech free, looking at things from far away, going into nature. This is huge, guys. Um, yeah, so this is what I'm trying today, but my other recording was on a beautiful hike, and I really wanted to share that one. But unfortunately, the audio didn't work, so it was just a little glitched out. But I would love to offer y'all some insights from when I'm on these trails, because I feel so connected that I feel like it's a really beautiful experience to kind of pay attention to what the trees are saying to me, or what they inspire within me, how they make me feel. And but that direct connection to nature is so much better than this, right? Because this is fractured. I'm sitting with you from my place where I am at one point in time, and I want to tap into things that really matter to me. So I hope you're receiving that. I know Walter Mercado, shout out to him. He was so good at recording like a lot of connected feelings, and he's kind of an icon of mine. But real connection is when we're with one another. We co-regulate. We need to go tech free. We need to give those phones a break, because they are tools that are intended to divide us, make us afraid of our own shadow, and separate us from ourselves, from the ways we bring each other and ourselves joy. That are not those are not commodities that they can profit from. So that's why they're not really encouraged by the algorithm. But regardless, that's something to keep in mind too when you're noticing the algorithm. It's intended to be divisive. So find ways in real life that counter that narrative, right? Creative rest is if you haven't been feeling inspired, or making anything creatively, that means you might not have been listening to that aspect of yourself. So finding a way to express music, art. But if you have been doing a lot of creative expression, letting that rest too, like maybe sometimes it's a certain modality you feel tired of doing. It's okay to use a different type of modality. But art making has always been how I express feelings, like internally, and notice them and kind of work through things. And I encourage y'all to find the creative ways that feel really good. Emotional rest. So just kind of noticing your emotions, addressing them, noticing if they're really heightened or overwhelming, and just kind of work through them. You don't have to have all the answers all at once, but things will come to you the more ease you are able to invite into your life. And that's why these systems are very important, that they give us space for ease, because we need to take walks. We need that time to ease into things, and this expands our capacity. And social rest. So sometimes when we're, alone a lot, we need to connect with our neighbors, and when we're have expended our social battery, it's okay to come back in. And sometimes there's room for both. Like sometimes if I'm in a social setting and I feel kind of funny, I'll start drawing, or I'll look at a plant, like whatever you need to do to feel cozy in the environment, that's totally good. Here's a little information on some boundaries that might be useful. Mostly, I want to correct a lot of assumptions. The type of boundaries that could help us are a practice, like most things, they're an embodied practice where we learn by doing. And I know one of the forms we're oppressed is to undervalue embodied wisdom. But it is truly a practice to just practice saying no when we're tired, saying no to situations if they've been abusive or disrespectful in ways that are disaligned, if you've had a difficult time breaking through, but in good faith you've tried, so maybe just not accepting invitations to certain things, or if you've noticed a difficulty with a friend in one setting, maybe trying a different type of setting. So a lot of that is our own internal reflection and accountability to the invitations that we're accepting and receiving. Just because it's expected of us doesn't mean we have to necessarily say yes. And so it is truly a practice, especially as a feminine person, to say no to things, to contradict, and it doesn't have to be a long explanation. We just have to know our own limits. So, how much time do we spend with someone doing something? Boundaries at work, and then a time boundary would be like, okay, now I shift my attention to something else. So I know for a lot of neurodivergent folks, such as me, I have some time blindness. So it takes a lot of structure to remind myself of how and when I have time for certain things, to prioritize. And it's kind of a constant thing that I need to keep, keep modifying, keep improving. Um, Physical boundaries is how much consent we give someone to our access, how much space we also give to others. So um, it's really important that we practice consent in all forms. So giving people the option to engage in a very explicit way makes it very clear for you and the other person what is your intention, and so they can decide, and vice versa. You have the power to decide, or you should have the power to decide how much you want to engage with someone else. And if someone's not giving you that option, then that tells you a lot about that maybe they're instead operating out of abuse culture. Conversational boundaries: you have the right to not engage in certain topics. I know with a lot of folks, with some people, we have to keep it real superficial. or simple or brief, very few words, especially if you have family members like I do that I um, have to stay in communication with, but they've been if they've been abusive in the past and they deflect when it comes to accountability, um, then we move to like more surface level or minimal conversation to protect ourselves. Obviously conversational boundaries could be like also realizing that hard conversations need to be had, and they should be had. We should have some good restorative practices that help us move through conflict in ways that improve our lives. Relationship boundaries are mutually agreed upon with loved ones. How you want to engage, again, it's going back to consent and being specific and intentional. Boundaries about your awareness of your own needs, and then again what you expose your brain to, social media influence. And if you've absorbed a lot of external influence, I do encourage you to examine yourself creatively and otherwise. So consider the grounding you can use of your five senses and your nervous system to re-regulate and get to a fruitful place. Here's some examples of mental grounding. Feel free to take pictures of any of these and practice. I encourage, all of this is just practice. Notice which ones you like, um, which ones help you. So these work by attending to your frontal lobes, kind of redirecting your attention, right? So and all of this, you'll notice if it helps you feel a little bit different. It's not very dramatic, but again, with a lot of practice, it can be very effective. Emotional grounding are thinking about your favorites, activities that bring you comfort. I like thinking a lot about activities that I liked as a little kid. Your favorites, thinking of your favorite things, your favorite people. So take a screenshot if you want to practice any of these emotional groundings. And then finally, physical grounding. This one tends to work really well with me with some nervous energy. So a lot of emotional freedom technique works really well. A lot of like intense physical exercise can be very, very grounding and just remind you of your body. Pressing your hands together. Breath work is included here. Walking activates the parasympathetic nervous system. So it is a discipline to take a moment for these things, but you always kind of come back to better version of yourself, or more cozy version of yourself, more confident, better able to work through conflict. So take a screenshot if you want to practice these. So this is from Norma Wong in chapter 5 about the horizon. So a time place where we finally look up, gaze on the horizon. Which horizon will we see? What horizon are we moving towards? As in any journey, the most consequential one requires our knowing that it is where we're going, right? Like not just going just to go. So ask yourself where you're putting your energy, what's needing more of your energy. Just take the time to really listen to yourself. Um, Go back into collectivism, right? These are more ancient ways of being that are more communal. They're more rooted in the resources we each bring to the table rather than what has been commodified. So it's all about just sharing what we've learned and being together and seeing our struggle as one and our liberation as one. And so these divisions, again, I always go back to this all or nothing thinking, the both sides, me versus you, that none of that is generative conflict. None of that is rooted in conflict resolution. It is manipulation, just like name calling, racism, all of that is manipulation, y'all, as you know. But any unlearning that we have to do is very normal. We're all acculturated into these ways of being if you grew up in the US. So I want to offer you this as a reflection piece. So yourself, your connection to yourself, your connection to your loved ones, maybe romantic partner, family, community, world, universe. Think about how this feels. For me, this is what I always try to envision every day, actually, as I try to repair the parts of me that were rooted in hostility, authoritarianism in the household I grew up in. I want to come back to a more fluid, caring ways of being. And think of the hierarchy of needs. I was taught this in my social work program in mental health, and we all kind of took it for granted. But think of any hierarchy is prioritizing hyper individuality. It's that separateness, it's a delusion. We cannot thrive if only a handful of folks thrive. I mean, it's already innately illogical. So it will take all of us working together, right, as best as possible. And I know some folks will not receive that invitation, but when the invitation comes, especially from someone you trust, like, please say yes and please work towards it. So this is a reminder, and these are some of the things that I kind of inherited from my family lineage. This is my mother walking with her mother. And I think about how I was in my mother's womb when she was in her mother's womb. And I like to think of all of the everyone that came before from that maternal lineage. I think about my mom and all of her siblings here with her dad and the cumbia we used to dance as children and the art that surrounded us that reminded me of what came before authoritarianism, before the patriarchy, and how these things remind me of liberation. Cumbia was literally invented, enslaved people in Colombia who were planning their freedom, and they put stories in the music. So that's why cumbia is so special to Colombian culture, and so is storytelling. So know that this is here. There's in each of our lineage, there's cues, right, and clues, and sometimes we have to recapture them, and we'll find it. We'll know as we trust our own regulated nervous system and learn to ease through conflict rather than just project it onto anyone else, right? We all have a role to play in our well-being and those of our neighbor, but blaming is sort of like a hierarchical belief. Like, it's that disposable ideology that, oh, it's just them, like, let's get rid of them. Like, no, we're human beings are not disposable. So thank you. If you want to reach out, reach out to me.